Okay.
Those of you who don't know me, I am Gina Boyleston, president and owner of Boyleston Realty Auction Incorporated. We are located in downtown Pensacola at 114 West Wright Street for the past 35 years. We are a full-service auction company and have conducted hundreds of auctions selling thousands of vehicles and equipment, as well as real estate, machinery, estates, bankruptcies, and more, and have provided auction services to the City of Pensacola for 35 years. Today, I'm seeking answers to questions I have about a recent bid process for auction services with the City of Pensacola. Your constituents need to know why an antique auctioneer whose bid was deficient was awarded an auction services contract at a higher percentage rate against the recommendation of 2 city departments and with no experience selling vehicles. Of more importance, actually, is the unfairness surrounding the bid process. Each year, I contact city staff to discuss the upcoming auction, which is typically held in the spring. This year, I was informed that the mayor's office had received requests from other auction companies asking to bid on auction services for surplus vehicles and equipment. It is not unusual for other companies to seek out contracts and bid on services, so I waited for the bid packet to arrive. On April 2nd, 2012, I received the request for quote to bid for auction services, which stipulated that bids were to be returned no later than May 2nd, 2012. On May 19th, I received an email that the mayor had chosen a local antique auctioneer for auctioneer services. I'm naturally curious, so I made a public records request of the bids received, of which there were 2, mine and one from Garth's Antique and Auction Gallery. I also requested and received emails between city staff concerning the auction. This is what I found. The mayor awarded the contract to an antique auctioneer whose bid was 10%. My company's bid was 8%. Not only had he awarded the contract, but he did so before the bids were due on May the 2nd, as evidenced by an email on April 19th from City Administrator Bill Reynolds to the purchasing director, and I quote, "George, the mayor would like to use Mr. Winston Garth, our auctioneer, for surplus city equipment. He can be reached at 456-7192. Please coordinate with him. Thanks, Bill." The mayor and his staff could not have reviewed my bid because I didn't submit it until May 2nd, 2012. Again, they chose my bid before, they chose who they were going to choose before my bid was submitted. So statements that the firms were comparable and that I had had the auction for decades meant nothing. The bid request specifically required that the vendor provide documentation of similar auctions in 3 recent years, which I provided. Mr. Garth's proposal contained 1 surplus auction in which he sold lawn maintenance equipment and general surplus, not 1 titled vehicle. His bid is deficient and fails to meet the criteria outlined in the request for quote, and his percentage is higher than mine. Mr. Garth's proposal demonstrates fully and completely that his specialty is antiques, not vehicles. Council members, I assure you that some of the vehicles we have auctioned for the city are old, but they are not antiques. Vehicle auctions are highly complex systems, and it takes years of experience to develop such a system. In comparison, we have a proven record of selling thousands of vehicles titled, a mailing list of thousands of buyers who regularly attend our vehicle and equipment auctions, trained staff to streamline the sale and transfer 50 to 100 vehicle titles in a matter of 2 to 3 hours under extreme pressure outdoors, 2 city departments involved in the auction process stating that our operation is turnkey and that we have performed outstandingly and recommended our selection. We completed and submitted a complete bid packet with no deficiency at an 8% gross fee. So at a time when the mayor's office is touting cutting expenses, why would you hire an antique auctioneer who has not demonstrated any expertise in the specialty of selling vehicles and pay them more? Unfortunately, the true issue here is the unfairness of this bid process. I have contacted the mayor's office and received no response, so I was compelled to come speak before you to let you know and the citizens of the city of Pensacola exactly how this bid process went. And as my daddy always said, there ain't no half-fresh egg. It's either fresh or it's rotten, and in my opinion, this one is rotten. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Boyleston. All right, Ms. Diane Mack.
Good evening, council members, Mr. President. Thank you. I'm here to speak in behalf of Gina Boyleston, whom I met today for the first time, and in condemnation of an unjust process, and to talk a little bit about the city's code of ethics. Let me read you something. This is from section 2.6.3, prohibitions of the City of Pensacola Code of Ethics, which is an ordinance. Paragraph G. An official or employee of the City of Pensacola may not, directly or indirectly treat anyone preferentially or in any other manner that is not generally accorded to city residents. I happen to be on the distribution list for the string of emails and the whole process of the purchasing of auction services for the City of Pensacola. And council members, I will tell you that the test I thought was, okay, in that, if any of you had a chance to read it, Mr. Reynolds happens to reply to Mr. Mayberger when Mr. Mayberger points out that Boyleston was the low bid, and that's a savings a little over $2,000. Mr. Reynolds said, well, that's really a minimal difference, and the mayor wants to spread the work around. So my thought process was this: okay, if I had an auction company and had written to or called the mayor and said, I would like some of the city's auction business, I, not being a friend of the mayor, what would the mayor have said? He would have said, contact purchasing. They have a bid process. That is not what happened with Mr. Garth. And oh, by the way, should anyone not know it, I do believe that a member of Mr. Garth's family happened to be an active supporter of the mayor during his election campaign. Council members, I don't know what you can do because this is within the purview of the mayor, but this what I consider a violation of the Code of Ethics goes beyond the mayor's office, because what has happened is that the mayor has instructed Mr. Reynolds, who works for him, and Mr. Reynolds has instructed Mr. Mayberger, who works for him. They have been instructed to violate the city's Code of Ethics. How can we stand for that, ladies and gentlemen? How do we tolerate that? The only action you may have, unless there is a change of conscience, a change of heart, I tell you what you can do. You, council members, have total control of purchasing if you change your ordinances. And frankly, this makes me suspicious of what else may have gone on that we do not know about because no one else protested. And frankly, council members, that is the stick that you have. The stick that you have is to go back and take back your purchasing power if we cannot trust this administration to do the fair and honorable thing with regard to the businesses in the City of Pensacola. And oh, by the way, isn't it ironic that we are paying so much for a disparity study, and this contract is going to be given to someone who is not? Ms. Boyleston is a woman business enterprise. That's part of what this disparity business is about, and we're about to take it away from her, or probably have been. I don't know if the contract has been executed. So I ask you please to search your consciences and do something. I know you're going to be discussing this in news business, and I said, I've never met Ms. Boyleston, but when I see injustice, I have to speak up. Thank you.
Ms. Myers.
I wanted to bring up the issue that Ms. Boyleston brought up. I find it very disturbing, the manner in which the bid was awarded, or lack of how it was awarded. I do think that a number of issues were raised. One was raised by Ms. Mack, and that is, was there a violation of our Code of Ethics? And if so, how do we arrive at investigating that, and what action would we take? I would like to remind council that under the charter at 4 Tech 02 A3, City Council powers and duties, we have the power to inquire into the conduct of any municipal office, department, agency, or officer, and to investigate municipal affairs, and for that purpose may subpoena witnesses, administer oaths, and compel the production of books, papers, or other evidence. And I think that this is a perfect situation where this council should exercise its powers under the charter to investigate this situation, to call a special meeting, and if we need to subpoena the mayor to come before us and explain to us how this came to be. Furthermore, I think that we need an opinion, and possibly, I don't know if we get that opinion from the city attorney, or if we can get the opinion from the Attorney General as to whether or not this constitutes an ethics violation under our state laws and our own ordinances regarding ethical conduct. So I don't think that this council should just do nothing. And this is my suggestion, and if anyone has a better suggestion, I would like to know, but I'm going to make a motion that we convene a special council meeting pursuant to our powers under the charter, and that we subpoena the mayor to come before us and provide all the information we need concerning this issue.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second.
President Hall?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I wasn't finished with my comments earlier, and I'd like to go ahead and...
Certainly.
Thank you. Essentially, when you have a desire to see a devil in everything, that's exactly what you see. Let me outline in totality what we're talking about here. We have essentially we essentially had an agreement between two people for 35 years that kind of got passed down.
Mr. President, I have to object to the city administrator intervening into the affairs of the executive branch here. I think it's only appropriate for members of the executive branch to debate this issue.
Well, we're the legislative branch, but...
I'm sorry, the
yeah.
legislative branch.
Right. Well, I would beg your patience on this, because I did ask Mr. Reynolds to hold off on the rest of his explanation until we got to new business.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I have a concern as well. It's a point of order that the maker of the motion and then the second have the right to speak first on their reasoning in making the motion. And then if you as president would choose to call on a staff member for clarification.
Okay, that's fine.
Ms. Myers, did you have anything further to say? Defer.
I will defer to other council members at this time. I think I've already stated what I had to
Ms.
say.
Deweese.
Thank you, Mr. President, because I had held off on my comments. And I do believe that under the charter we have the right to ask for explanation in this process and to investigate. Whether it's a special meeting or not is not the important part to me. It's that we understand the process that was to be used and actually requested by the mayor, if that process was actually followed. So I don't know the wording of this, if we need to specifically say the bid process and compel the purchasing person or the purchasing department to bring that evidence forward and explain the situation to us at a committee of the whole, if that's appropriate. But I am concerned as well, and I do understand that within the bounds of the charter, this is allowable, as Mr. Reynolds had said, but you have to look at the process and make sure it was followed. That's our job. So I do support the motion and possibly a further explanation within it of how we will handle this. Thank you.
There has been the process. When we talk about processes, we've gone through the processes of opening a can of worms. And now that it's open, I'm not going to hesitate. There are a number of contracts that was brought out in the city of Pensacola that individuals have had that are over 30 years old, and they have been continuous. There are a number of them on the table. Number two, we are in the middle of doing a disparity study. These kinds of actions and behaviors can be identified, or at least should be identified in that disparity study. We're looking for improprieties or things that have been going on for a period of time that we need to address. I don't know if a special meeting is appropriate at this time until we get both sides of the story, what has actually happened here. And to be honest with you, I don't know. I've heard what was stated, but I don't know what happened or how it happened. However, to review the process will certainly reveal what has happened. But I don't want to just tinker around with the tip of the iceberg. If it's all out there, we've invested $250,000 in a disparity study. Let's look at everything we're doing. And you folks will be surprised as to what's under that rock. So if we're going to look at not just an isolated incident, let's look at the entire process that we've been using down through the years that make people feel that they have been disenfranchised. So that, if y'all want to open that can of worms, let's open the whole can and remove the top.
Right. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I stated before, you had a 35-year-old sweetheart deal with no open process, not even a contract, being decided between a member of the public who had a firm and a member of staff. No sunshine, no process. For those of us that are so concerned about process, there was no process. It just happened for over 35 years. Essentially, what occurred and what is verified by the email string that everybody has, but I think what isn't understood as to what the story is behind it, the mayor and I had a lengthy discussion at one point, and I can't give you the date or anything in that regards. It was relatively soon after I came here, specifically talking about competition and opening up what we do as a city to others. And we still are, and we will continue to still look at these kinds of situations. This contract, or excuse me, this process, this agreement between two individuals, when we were looking at things, it became clear that the mayor wanted to try something different. He has the authority, without an RFQ, without anything, to just have said, Mr. Garth, you get the contract. And him and I made that discussion, and that's what he said. I communicated that to staff. Staff told me at that point, well, we put out a request for quotes already. You've already approved that, and I had simply forgotten it. And I said, well, that's great. Well, that will work perfectly then, because then we can see if there's any difference between the firms, and we can see, and hopefully, I was hoping we were going to get more than two, but you know, two is what we had. I said, okay. So staff looked at this, and there was no deficiencies in the request for quotes, unlike what you've been told. Staff will be more than happy to tell you that essentially the two firms, and it's also in the email chain, essentially the two firms were similar in service delivery. The only issue is that we had this long-standing relationship, and they were easy to work with. And changing would be difficult. Recognizing that change sometimes is necessary, and recognizing that with interjecting a little competition into a process and actually establishing a process where one never existed before, and actually having a contract where one has never existed before, that not only could we shake things up a little bit, frankly, maybe get some competition between a couple members, a couple of firms in the public square, and maybe our prices ultimately will come down. This is a one-year contract for less than $25,000 or so. The overall effect is about $2,000 at the bottom line. I believe that when we come back next time around, this particular process will bring our prices down. That's competition, and that's essentially what we're trying to do here. To somehow paint this, again, it's the devil in everything. Somehow to paint this as some grandiose scheme that we are trying to direct things. And let me address the issue from Ms. Mack in regards to the ethics issues. The ethics issue is that someone was related to the person who got the contract. Ladies and gentlemen, I've only been in Pensacola about 9 months, but I can tell you what I ask or what I try to find out when I meet people now: who are you related to? Who's your business partners? Because it all comes around. This community is incredibly. It's not 7 degrees of separation, it's a 1 degree of separation. And if we were to judge everything based upon the fact that a mayor's supporter was a relative of the individual that got the contract, I don't think that's an ethical standard, frankly. So what you're attempting to do here is to use a process to somehow establish that the mayor has committed some ultimate sin. Once again, we've been here how many times before at this point? The amount of time that I spend on issues like this that really shouldn't have a lot of time spent on them, because frankly, we as a community have a lot of things that we need to do. But I've spent 12, 15 hours in the last 2 weeks on this particular issue. That's 12 to 15 hours that I don't have to spend on other issues. This is not any ill will. This was not some concerted effort to ensure that one person over the other got a contract. This was specifically to interject competition into the process. And yes, it was also meant not to simply hand over for the 36th year a contract when both firms were of equal stature. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Dr. Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Reynolds mentioned that we've seen the emails. Maybe they came today. I didn't get a chance to see them. And so at this point, I'm not ready to take any formal action because I need to gather more information. But I do hope that Mr. Reynolds will take some of his own comments to heart and share them with the mayor. That, part of what he said that the mayor is looking, or the criticism he had of the previous contract was there was no, or previous agreement or relationship, there was no open process and it wasn't in the sunshine, and an effort to interject competition. And I think, this may be one of the small things that has come up, but I think that is a common criticism I hear in the community about our government right now. There are a lot of contracts being let not in the sunshine. Now, I understand that was part of what was promised with the charter, but when I heard support about the charter, I understood that there would be more openness and transparency in our government. And what I'm hearing in our community is a lack of openness and transparency. And it's contracts like these where it's like, was it a friend? Was it not a friend? And so, the facts may support the administration's argument, but I think that it's the repetition in the community that I continue to hear, which is what leads myself, others, to say, well, what if there's something not quite right with this agreement? Because it's something that I continually hear in the public. So I'm not going to vote to have a major investigation. I'm not going to vote tonight to have a major investigation, simply because I would like to take some time and learn more about it. It's hard to get to an investigation point when I don't have any facts before me besides just some comments. But I think in general that this is just touching on what the concerns in the community I continue to hear. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gerald.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this is just an attempt to make an amendment to the motion on the floor. But it is my belief that if we're going to look at one, we need to look at all of them. And we don't want to do this piecemeal. We need to look at all of the contracts that are out there and just what kind of relationships they are established under. And if we can amend the motion on the floor to do that, to look at all of those contracts, then I could support it. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to wait and see where this all goes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'd like to address my second, that I made that with concern about our action that we're actually requesting, and I would like to ask for a friendly amendment to this, that we request complete information from the purchasing department on the process that the mayor requested in this case, the actual RFP with all the dates and all the respondents, and have this be part of the agenda for our July meeting. And I offer that friendly amendment to the motion.
I accept the friendly amendment.
Okay, Ms. Myers.
I want to respond to Mr. Reynolds' comments. I saw enough documentation regarding this issue to give me great concern. And the issue as to the fact that Ms. Boyleston's company has been doing these auctions for 35 years, that there's been no process. It seems like that the city's just been hiring her to do this, her company to do this. I feel that that's only relevant in this sense. If you let out an RFP, then you need to look at all the bidders objectively. And the fact that she had the contract or had been doing this for 35 years is really only relevant to the fact that she has experience. And when I looked at all of the documentation that she presented and that the other company presented, I wondered, well, are we in the antique business now? Because I could not see that any really truly relevant experience on the part of the company that ultimately got the bid. And I feel that statements like 35-year-old sweetheart deal, I feel like the term sweetheart is a prejudicial adjective, but I don't think that it's relevant to that RFP, because you let out an RFP, two people bid on it, or two companies bid on it, and you should have just taken their qualifications and looked at them. Now, it is relevant that she does have experience, and she has a lot of experience. Now, that would be relevant to the RFP. But just to say, well, you've had it too long, you've been doing it all these years, therefore, that's the only reason we're going to deny your bid. In fact, if you wanted competition, the purpose of competition is to lower the price. Well, according to what I've heard and read, you gave it to a company that is charging us a greater percentage than Ms. Boyleston's company is. So, I mean, isn't that defeating the purpose of competition? But Councilman Geralds has raised a very, very good point. We really need to be looking at the whole picture and not just one particular incident. However, this incident has come before us. I think there's enough documentation to cause us to have concerns, and I think that we should pursue them. And so I can go home and rest easy tonight, at least knowing I tried to address an issue that I think is not a trivial issue, no matter how much Mr. Reynolds wants to trivialize it. This is not a trivial issue. So I support the amended friendly amendment to this motion, and I hope the rest of council will vote in favor of it.
Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just real quick to address Councilwoman Pratt's concerns in regards to hidden contracts that are out there. We report every contract that's over $25,000, and you know, if this council wants every contract reported, so be it. I mean, you know, so the bottom line is that we're not hiding anything. Again, what we're trying to do is we're certainly shaking things up, ladies and gentlemen. Don't make any you know, I won't make any bones about that. That's part of why I was brought in, is to help that process.
And I personally feel I'm disappointed, Mr. President, in what appears to be some unusually quick reactions that can be interpreted by and perceived by the public as unnecessarily combative. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So I can appreciate the fact that Ms. Boyleston felt that her experience and her training maybe would have given her a little leverage in an open bid process. I can also appreciate the fact that Mr. Reynolds said they were trying to bring competition in an effort to lower the cost to the city, which it would appear that occurred as a result of the notice that others were bidding. They lowered the price from the previous 35 years of 10% to an 8%, if I'm understanding things correctly. So that I appreciate the effort that Mr. Reynolds and the mayor were doing in going after it. However, I am disappointed in the decision that was made, because rather than going with the most experienced, most qualified, and lowest bid, the decision was made that they would award the contract to a new bidder at a higher price. From a process end, if the idea of going out for quotes and bids at any point is to bring the best value and the best process to the city for its purchases, I believe that was lost in the decision that was made.
I am offended by Mr. Reynolds' remarks that this was a sweetheart deal. I have worked diligently all of my career to do the most professional job I possibly can for every client I have, including the City of Pensacola. I know full well what it takes to do this type of auction, and I know Councilwoman Pratt, you have not received the email. I sent them out on Tuesday to all council members. Have any of you had a chance to review in full the email that I sent? Okay. Because there is firm documentation showing the bid process. Surely the mayor had the legal right and the choice to choose whomever he wanted to, but he didn't do that. He sent out a request for quote. And I think once you send out the request for quote and it's due on May the 2nd and you've already made up your mind, I have an issue with that. And I think that most people would have an issue with that. This idea of auctioning vehicles, and Ms. Dubuisson touched on this, it is a fine-tuned, well-oiled process. And when you have 150 to 200 people standing in the yard out at the fleet management garage, and you have 2 or 3 hours to sell those vehicles and properly transfer the titles and send them off with proper documentation, account for all the funds, and work through all of the very complex tax issues. Are you a dealer? Are you from the state of Florida? Are you an individual? What state? These are very complex issues that have to be answered quickly and done correctly, because I guarantee you, if you don't, you're going to lose buyers. You're not going to lose just this 2%, which the $2,000 that seems to be some arbitrary number based on sales of $100,000. You're going to lose tens of thousands of dollars, because I know these 1,500 people that are on my mailing list that have been coming to my auctions for 35 years. That's my mailing list. No one gets it. Mr. Garth won't have it, nor anyone else. That is our stock in trade. That's what makes us a professional, one of the things, one of the elements. And these bidders, when they get back to Georgia or Oklahoma or Jacksonville or Milton, and they have issues with their titles, they're not going to call Mr. Garth because they already knew when they went to that auction that they don't know what they're doing. And I guarantee you, they don't know what they're doing when it comes to this kind of sale, this kind of auction. They're going to call City Hall. And everyone that I've dealt with, that I've worked with in the in the finance department and at the city garage, the burden of dealing with all of this is going to fall on their desks. So you spent 12 to 15 hours, Mr. Reynolds. These employees are going to spend countless hours and weeks wading through this paperwork and trying to make it work, and still paying an unqualified professional 10% gross to put in his pocket when they're doing all the work. And if you haven't seen the bids yet, and as Mrs. Myers has, and I think that Councilwoman Deweese has looked through it as well, and I think you did too, President Hall, you will see clearly that this company that was chosen is not qualified to do a vehicle heavy equipment auction. And not only have we done it for 35 years, we've done it for the U.S. Bankruptcy Court, the U.S. Small Business Administration, Escambia County, ECUA, City of Panama City. The list goes on. So this is not a question of are we qualified, is he qualified? These are apples and oranges. This is not the same kind of company. This is like telling the dental hygienist to run on in there and do that root canal. Okay. So it's a serious issue, and it's one that I'm not going to let go. So regardless of what you decide here and how far it goes, I'm not backing down and I'm not letting go. It's wrong. It's unethical. It needs to be set aside, this contract, if it's been signed. And I need an opportunity to have my bid properly looked at, and obviously that is not a concern of the mayor's.
Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Boyleston. Ms. Mack.
Thank you again, Council. I want to make 2 points. First of all, as a citizen of the City of Pensacola, and looking at, in your proposed budget, the amount of dollars that are going to be spent on economic development, I am disturbed, ashamed, disappointed to hear the professional city administrator spout such venom about a small business in this community that pays taxes. It was venomous. Somewhere along the way, there is a group that has implanted in this gentleman's, this great professional's mind, who is new to our committee, that it is a grievous sin to have done business with this city for years and done it well. It appalls. I am appalled by that. And think about it. Think about what this says to other small businesses and other businesses. The whole process. You know, you look at what has happened, and you know, business will look at, okay, you know, there is no justice, there is no equity, there's no fairness. You know, you just don't bother. You know, you cannot do business with the City of Pensacola because they ain't fair. And when you have, you know, we're talking about out of both sides of our mouths. You know, we want business, we encourage it, but when business does well and has done well for the City of Pensacola and been adequately compensated, why is that a sin? I was going to talk about the contradiction in saying we want competition, and the quote process brought competition, and then no, competition isn't that important because we're going to pay 10% instead of 8%. That's already been covered. I don't need to cover that. I just ask you, council members, how this looks to the business community and how we can trust the process. This is not. There is nothing wrong with having been in business for a long time. As long as everything is fair, the process has got to be fair. Okay, if it is this administration's wish to no longer do contracts with people who have been doing work for the city for years, well then, by gum, put it in writing. You know, don't invite them. If that is going to be a criterion, folks, don't put it in writing and let people know, don't even bother. We want new blood. We want to spread the money around. If you've done business for the city for 30, 35 years, don't even bother to come to the table because we're wasting your time. I don't think that's the best way to get in some cases like this one, obviously, the best way to get the best service for the city. But if that's going to be your yardstick, let us know. Let the community know and be done with it. And don't do this, backdoor stuff. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I've got kind of a quandary here. Ms. Myers has indicated that she wants to speak. As the maker of the motion, she does get to speak more than 2 times. But my quandary is what Mr. Weiss is calling a friendly amendment was actually a whole brand-new motion. We kind of threw the first one out because the first one was that we were going to subpoena the mayor, that we were going to have a special city council meeting, and then you wanted the friendly amendment where we had documents sent to a presentation to the next committee of the whole, and that whole original motion was thrown out. So now you're the maker of the motion, and so one of you will get to speak, but only one of you. So you guys decide which one.
Well, Mr. President, I actually wanted to respond to Ms. Mack.
Well, you can, but if you're not the maker of the motion, you've already spoken twice. And so I can either let you or Mr. Weiss speak.
Well, I'll let Mr. Weiss speak
Okay.
since she's the maker of the friendly amended motion.
Yeah, okay. All right, Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. And if you'd rather, it can be a substitute motion. I don't know how you want to clear this from our plate at this point. But I made the second conditional on further discussion and to have more detail in the motion of what we actually are requesting.
Let's do it as a substitute motion, and I'll need a second on that.
Second.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Weiss.
Would you like for me to restate then my substitute motion that I'm offering?
No,
Would you like for her to withdraw hers, or how do you want to handle this, is what I'm asking?
Well, if she withdraws her motion, then we
Let me make it real clean. I'm withdrawing my
okay,
motion.
okay. So we've got a motion and a second on the floor. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. And my concern here tonight is that we have a citizen that has given a great amount of time to this and brought a considerable amount of information. And she, as others, if they bring the same information, deserve an official answer from the administration, the executive and the legislative branch. We are the daily contact with the citizens in this community and the people that choose to do business with the city. And this is her opportunity to bring this situation forward. I believe at a minimum we owe to her officially responding to this and asking for this information to be brought forward and presented in a process-oriented manner at our next committee of the whole. So I would almost beg for support of council on this, that this is our job. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Gerald, you've already spoken.
Well, I want to call the question because it's clear to me what the motion is, and it's
Okay.
not going to be resolved here tonight, so let's just call the question, vote on it, and move forward.
Okay. Please vote. And that fails on a 4-4 vote.